Welcome to Transcendence. You're listening to the 100 podcast, a show about CW's sci-fi series, The 100. I'm Dan, your mountain man, and today I'm joined by my favorite grounder, Olga.
Hey everybody, today we're discussing Season 7 and giving our definitive list of the top 10 villains and episodes of The 100.
Yeah, and talking about the season, we're going to review it for the last time.
This is sad.
Yeah, this is our...
Swan song?
Swan song. It's our last war, if you will.
Wonder where you picked that
up. So this is our final podcast, unless there's a prequel. So get your tissues ready for some crazy times.
And what are these tissues for?
Oh boy. I was not aiming for that, but okay. So this is both a video on youtube.com/doingok and an audio podcast, so you can listen to it any way you want it. That's the way you need it. And what else do we get? We get some housekeeping before we get into things. We just did a video on the haunting of Bly Manor. If you want to check that out on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/doingok. We also, this coming week, will have a video on Motherland, Fort Salem, and what we want from Season 2. You know, stay tuned in general to the YouTube channel. We will be having more content there. We have other podcast plans in the not too distant future for audio stuff too. So, you know, also keep an eye on at the 100 podcast on Twitter, at doing okay video. It's okay with just okay without the AW. I mean, AY. You know what I'm saying. So yeah, keep checking us out. I hope you'll follow us on to future journeys, and maybe there will be a prequel. Maybe I don't know what will happen.
Maybe we'll sign on for whatever the next.
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely cover it in some fashion if it happens. We still have to debate whether we'd keep it on the same feed or not, but we'd at least put the first episode on this feed.
That's getting into the nitty-gritty.
Into the nitty-gritty weeds that might not even occur. So let's get into Season 7. We're going to start just by talking about our general thoughts now that we're a few weeks out, which also, I'm sorry, it took us a little while. I got sick this past week. So.
And we didn't want to say goodbye.
We didn't.
Yeah, this is weird. I've been, wanting to procrastinate this. Yeah.
So what are you thinking about Season 7 now that you're 7 years away from it?
Yeah, 2 weeks equals 7 years in 2020 time.
Yeah.
It was a flawed season, man.
I thought you were going to say it's a flop.
Am I not saying that? It's hard, like when I tell people that we do a podcast about this show, which I do begrudgingly because I don't want people to know in my real life. But when I tell them and they're like, oh, I've heard of this show. Is it worth checking out? My whole thing before was like, just get through parts of Season 1. Like, it really hits its stride if you're into sci-fi. But now that I know how it ends, can I, in good faith, like, recommend this show to other people? And the answer is yes. But part of me will be like, will they be annoyed with me? Will they think that I like how this show ends?
I feel like the best I could say is it has its ups and downs. I still quite enjoyed it. I'm glad I watched it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard. Would you recommend someone watch Game of Thrones right now, having seen the ending? It seems crazy to say no, given how important Game of Thrones was and how many great episodes it had, but...
Yeah, I don't think I would. Yeah, actually, I wouldn't recommend Game of Thrones. To people, I'd be like, the books aren't done.
Yeah.
And the show was highly flawed. And the thing is, Game of Thrones, everyone knows that people hate the ending. The 100, it could slide under that wire.
Yeah. Well, people will surely find it on Netflix and be frustrated for years to come.
I think it was number 5 on Netflix on Saturday.
It does well.
Yeah.
On the Netflix.
Yeah.
We shall see how people slowly come to realization about it. So when we talk about Season 7 just by itself, I feel like I'd sum it up by calling it a messy bitch. It's just... There are things I like about it, which we're totally going to talk about. I don't hate it, which I understand a lot of people do for legitimate reasons. I think it is, spoiler warning for when we rank the seasons, it's at the bottom. I think it's the worst season.
Might as well just get it out of the way. Like that is related to how we view the season is it's the worst season.
Yeah, I think it's the worst season. That said, I enjoy a number of things about it.
Yeah.
So like let's get into this list. We have pros and cons list here.
Yeah,
we're going to
sort
of zoom through it as our general thoughts, because then we're going to get into our villain rankings, our episode rankings, and then we have lots of feedback. So there's a lot to do here, and let's get into it. Our first pro is Murphy and Amori, which, I mean, both them as a couple and both of their developments, I think they were the highlights as far as characters go this season.
They had real arcs. They had real emotional development, and I would argue that they have, like, payoff.
Yeah, and not even just within this season, but they feel like they're the people who, throughout the series, got the most full experience to me.
Yeah.
I think they had great romantic things throughout the season. I love seeing Murphy evolve into this, more leadership role. I think it's worth noting that kind of went away at the very end there, but in favor of more romantic stuff, which I also loved. So what you gonna do?
They were consistently a part of this season, and they didn't, maybe because they were the most like standalone people.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were the ones that through and through had relevance and had a story.
Yeah. Raven, I also have in the pro column. I wouldn't say that it was like even close to her best season, but not her worst. Yeah. And I don't really have a problem with her this season,
which is a relief.
Yeah.
I mean, it's this thing of maybe I wish that they had done this journey with her earlier and better in the series, but at least they finally like got to it.
Well, and I think the other problem is that they like kind of retcon it to seem like she's never done anything bad before now, which isn't great. But if you're talking about just within this season, I think she was handled overall not badly. Struggling with our pros here.
Yeah.
But I mean, almost everything here has a caveat to it, where it's like the next one is Hope, which I love Hope. I think Shelby 100% is a pro, both literally and figuratively.
Good one.
She's great. I really like her backstory. I really like everything about her. And then she kind of has nothing to do in the last third.
Yeah.
It feels like they spent so long. Here's the ultimate problem is all the behind the scenes stuff, and the fact that they didn't have Belle and they didn't have Eliza for as much as they wanted to, and so then they switched who the protagonists of the show were, really to Echo and Hope in a lot of ways, and so then it feels like, oh, they're doing so much to set up these characters, and then once the main characters come back, it's like, okay, we're done with that, and that just leads to a very disjointed season. Yeah,
absolutely.
But I really do like Hope quite a bit, and I like where she ended out. I just wish that she had more of an importance.
Yeah, I wish that after Dios's death, that she still had like action relevance, growth, like a learned experience beyond like mourning her mother and wishing that she was better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for me, a similar character is Indra, who I think had her best season for the first half of this, and then didn't kill Shade Hedda over and over again, which made her just seem so stupid. But I mean, I love so many pieces of it. I love her taking her place at the head of one crew, and how she handled Maddie and everything like that. And her facing off with Shade Hedda the first time I thought was great. And
even her working with him when they were both captured.
Yeah, there was a number of good moments for her. I really did enjoy her quite a bit this season. Her at the soup. Who doesn't love the soup moment?
That became a meme that I missed.
So, really did enjoy her until the back third.
Pattern emerges.
And then I think there are a few enjoyable standalone episodes, primarily Anaconda, which is the prequel. I think did a very solid job. And we'll get back to that when we talk about the top episodes of the season and stuff like that. And also, I do want to say that I think Alicia Debnam Carey returning is a pro for the show. Whether you like the way she returned or felt like she needed to return or whatever, I think it means a lot to a lot of people. I think she did a great job when she returned. And they didn't like break the show by, well, people could argue they did break the show, but they didn't. I'm glad they didn't like return her from the dead or something.
Right. Yeah.
So overall, I'm really glad she came back, but
same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cons. Bellamy and the response to his death.
By the characters, not like the fandom response to his death, like the way that people in universe responded to him dying.
Yeah. So, I mean, not good. I mean, here's the thing. I liked where his story was going. Yeah. And then it stopped.
And then they killed him instead of... And they had Clark kill him. He didn't just die. She killed him.
Yep. Which brings us to the next point, which is Clark's arc.
She'd be better off back on the arc than with what she did in this season.
She disappeared for so much of it. She was barely relevant for so much of it. And then her big, return to relevancy was killing Bellamy.
And doing a backslide into her season 5 self.
And then just becoming... her lowest point.
But not even the real one hit up. Like, I don't know.
The intelligent one hit up.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There's nothing more to be said.
No, we've talked about it a lot.
Echo, I also have in the cons column. I think there were seeds of good ideas throughout her arc. But overall, it comes together to form an amorphous blob that... I don't know what they're trying to say about her. Especially in the same episode as the Hope. Like, she and Hope kind of end up having, like, sort of the same end result, right? And I think Hope is way more interesting.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Again, she was so important. She was basically the protagonist for so much of it. It didn't feel earned. It felt all over the place. And then she just stops being important. Like, she becomes, like, a D-level character in the last 4 episodes.
Yeah. She's not even in the penultimate episode.
Yeah.
Which...
And then she has, like, 2 lines in the finale. She was basically our protagonist, and then she has, like, 2 lines in the finale. So, totally not good, in my opinion.
And she really falls flat in the whole response to Bellamy's death column.
Yeah. I want to throw in as a pro, I did like Levitt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to give Bill a pro.
Call me Bill.
Overall,
I'll call you anytime.
Overall, I enjoy a good Bill. Also, set design, things like that. I think they did a good job with their budget,
Fair enough, man. These are valid pros. Yeah. This season didn't feel, like, small.
Yeah.
The scale felt appropriate.
I think they did a good job overall, yeah. For what the show is. Shade Hedda we have in the con column. Overall, he overstayed his welcome. He really just felt like fucking the writers love this guy, and I never understood why, other than they like J.R. Bourne.
Yeah, I just feel like the thing that makes Indra worse is the thing that makes Shade Hedda go in the con column. Yeah. She should have killed him a lot earlier. They didn't need him to be the thing that, like, sets off the last war. I think they could have found a different way to write that scene to protect him and keep him alive. For that was not worth sacrificing Indra. Yeah. And also just, like, Sanctum went on far too long. Yeah. His, like, plotting went on far too long. And even though he was campy and fun and we enjoyed, like, laughing at him sometimes, get there faster, get rid of him sooner.
And I mean, I would argue in a lot of ways that, like, if you took him out completely from the season, would the season be worse? Like what effect does he have on, like, the actual big pieces of the show? And I would say almost none. Like, you could replace him with another character so easily for so many of the small things that he did. I would say that the only really positive things he created for the show were giving Murphy an opponent.
That's what I was going to say. He is really what helped turn Murphy into the person that he is.
Yeah, he helped Murphy, and he helped, I'd say, Indra in the first third. But... yeah, overall, I mean, I don't know that he needed to ever make it out of Sanctum.
Yeah. He shouldn't also the whole like stupidity of Bill trusting him to like retrieve Maddie. Like he just said he didn't want the last. I can't get over that.
Yeah.
That
stupidity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I mean, talking more about Sanctum, it definitely, in general, overstayed its welcome. Nikki was not something I enjoyed or needed. I did like Hacks. We could put that in the pro column, but not worth it ultimately, I would say. And then just the pacing, the general messiness, the magic aliens. This isn't how most people would want the show to end, and it wasn't how I would either.
No, you didn't want... You especially didn't want aliens.
I came around a little bit.
You did. Yeah, I feel like I got, swept up in the emotion of it. But no, there's a reason that this is not what we were predicting. Because why would we ever have predicted this season the way it was? Like, why?
Yeah. All right. Shall we get into our top 10 villains?
Yeah, let's do
definitive ranking.
Sure.
Definitive.
We'll talk about
by
it.
the end of this, we'll have our definitive.
Yes.
All right. So do you want to read our definition here?
Our villain definition is someone who consistently opposes our heroes to the point of threatening or doing them harm. They don't have to be evil to function in the story as a villain, but if you do something super evil, you're a villain. This list is ranking the quality of the villain as a character, not their morality level.
Yeah, so even though, right now we have Blood Reina as the top thing in the list, we're not saying she is the most evil character on the show.
Right, yeah.
We are saying she is the best villain and that she is a really well done character.
Yes.
All right, so what we've done here, we've been ranking the villains in the episodes as we've gone through rewatching the seasons to sort of save time. I've come up with what my list is for each of these things.
He took the season 5 and 6 review list, did a once over, and then made changes to it without my input. But this is my input now.
Yes. So basically, I'm going to say what my list is because I just wanted to think about it for a long time and not have that on the recording. So I'll say my list and then we'll talk about who I took off, what I changed, what we think maybe should shift, whether the rankings or adding people, whatever. So my list is number 1, Blood Reina as the best.
Yeah.
2, Pike. 3, Josephine. 4, Russell. 5, Ali and Jaha. 6, Dante. 7, Call Me Bill. 8, Cage. 9, Murphy season 1. And 10, Shade Hedda. My major changes here were adding Shade Hedda and Cadigan. I also moved Murphy season 1 up a little bit so he wouldn't be knocked off the list, and removed Luna and Echo from season 4.
Because basically you moved Luna down, and then by adding Bill and Shady, it pushed them off.
Yeah. Okay. And my thought process here was, the more I thought about it, I think Murphy is a better villain than Luna. Luna was very villainous and creepy in a single episode. She did not have a particularly good arc into becoming that level of a villain, in my opinion. Whereas Murphy, I thought, was a fantastic villain throughout multiple episodes with a good motivation in season 1.
Yeah.
And then I put Shade Hedda at the bottom because I think he deserves a spot on the list. I don't think he's a great character, but I think J.R. Bourne had a lot of fun with it. I enjoyed watching him enough. I don't think he deserves anywhere other than 10.
Yeah.
But I think he had a lot of cool moments. I can 100% understand why people wouldn't want him on the list at all, but he's such a villainous part of the 100.
So we said if you do something super evil, you're a villain. You deserve to be on this list.
Yeah.
He massacres a bunch of Sanctumites.
Yeah. He just wants power. And that makes him not a particularly intriguing character, but I think that the scene queuing, some of the machinations and planning that he had early in the season, and he's just fun. He eats cookies. He has wacky hair. He has crazy tattoos. I enjoy him to a certain degree.
Yeah.
He's a much more fun than McCreary, in my opinion.
Oh my, yeah, McCreary. Yeah, he is. McCreary is a lot of those things too, but not as good as Shade Hedda. So yeah, no, I completely agree that Murphy season 1 deserves to stay on this list. I fully expected Echo season 4 to be pushed off, and I kind of agree that Luna, even though she would be fine with humanity being over, not as much of an interesting,
Yeah.
like,
I mean, I loved her
high point
for
villain.
that episode
Right.
as a villain, and I loved her before that episode not as a villain, but I don't think that transition went well.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So your other kind of big change that I don't know how much I agree with is putting like Josephine and Russell in the, like, still in the 3 and 4.
Well, so they were in 3 and
slots.
4 before.
Yes.
But they were switched.
Yes.
Russell was number 3 and Josephine was number 4, and I put Josephine above Russell.
Yeah. And I don't know.
My argument is this. No one is going to walk away from season 6 saying Russell is their favorite part of the season. Lots of people are going to walk away from season 6 saying Josephine is their favorite part of the season.
Okay.
And that doesn't necessarily mean she's a better character. She's more fun. But I just think she was such a great foil for Clark. And the fact that they, like, almost made a friendship and everything.
A begrudging alliance.
And that we got multiple actors portraying this villain and they all brought something fun to it. Like,
so dare I say, actually, so it's not so much that I have a problem with Josephine being number 3.
okay.
I'm actually wondering if Cadigan deserves to be in between Josephine and Russell.
Ooh, wow, that's a big difference than me.
Yeah, and split up their thing.
You think Cadigan's better than Dante?
Yeah.
Really?
If you look at it, it's kind of a scale thing. Where for season 2, you know, it's just like the Grounders, Sky Crew, and the Mountain Men. And it's just like these, you know, 3 groups. And for that, Dante is, like, you know, a big deal. He is really a big villain. But once you factor Bill into it, his, like, effect historically and what he did to people, like, he was willing to lock people out of the bunker even as they were, like, melting out of radiation because they didn't show the right level of devotion to him and his beliefs. He was willing to, like, kill off the mother of his children because she disobeyed him. And then you go, you know, forward to now to season 7, and he is so, like, such an egomaniac that he is willing to, like, end all of humanity on his beliefs, and that he is the way, like, his way is the only way. And he's like, I'm doing this for everybody, but I'm the one who does it. I am the savior. Yeah. He is more of a, like, Dante doesn't actually really want to, like...
Yeah, but okay, to me, we're getting back to the same argument of, is this a scale of morality or of a quality of a character? And to me, yes, 100%, Cadigan is more evil than Dante.
I think he is a quality character. I think that he and Dante are arguably, like, as good as each other in terms of, like, the quality of their character. But if you factor in the scale and you factor in, like, you know, how Bill's scenes are really good. Yeah. He really is, like, someone who was there throughout, you know, puppeteering and things like that. And he doesn't care about his, like, disciples on a, you know, certain level. He just cares that he has disciples.
Well, and I think it also is worth noting that I think he is nuanced and that I think he legitimately feels guilt and remorse about how things went with his family, and that he does love them in his own weird way.
And he's a hypocrite.
Yeah, and he's a hypocrite, but he has a good way of sort of morphing people and bending them to his will to a certain degree. And I think there's also something to be said about the fact that he is someone who was set up in season 4. And that's a big deal. Like, he is, like, yeah, he's a big overarching villain, and some people were saying, like, oh, he came out of nowhere. But to me, I'm like, so many shows have, oh, he's the big overarching villain, but where it really is like, oh, he's been responsible for everything. And I'm like, but they actually set him up. Yeah. Like, he didn't just come out of nowhere.
Yeah, and his bunker is what, like, saves humanity, you know, or saves our group anyway in a lot of ways. I think he is not just better than Dante, he is also better than Jaha/Ali.
I cannot get on board with him being better than Russell, personally, because they're actually very similar characters, but Russell I felt his emotion much more. And the fact that he at the end, Russell, I think, got better because of his one episode in season 7.
Mm-hmm.
Like him wanting to die, he really is an emotional character who is a distorted version of our heroes, right? Like in a lot of ways. Like
okay, yeah.
And I think that he's not a sociopath in the way that I feel like Bill is, and I just think the performance to me was a step above.
Okay. But I buy that.
No, but you wanted to go above Ali.
Well, and that's what I'm wondering. How do you feel about that? Is he so much better that he deserves to be better than they're like
combined? I'm okay with it. It wouldn't be what I would do, but if that's how you feel, I'm okay with it.
You know what? I know you always make fun of me for thinking like it's about the top 10, not about the like top five.
Yeah.
But when I look at it, I'm like, do I want to knock Jaha and Ali out of the top 5? And I guess you're right, no. But I do think that he is a better villain than Dante.
Right. I will give you that, even though I think you're a little crazy. Is there anything else you want to like you do? I realized we didn't, we're not putting Nikki or Anders on this list. They should get a shout out, I guess, but not good enough characters to make it on here, in my opinion.
No.
Also, what do we think about the aliens from the finale?
That's a great question.
So when it comes down to a morality thing, I would say they're 100% villainous. They lead to the destruction of the human race. They destroy millions of species or whatever. I would say that in a lot of ways they are the most evil of any organization on the show. That said, the show doesn't want you to think that. We're supposed to read the ending as a happy ending. And they're also only in a single episode. I personally don't think they are quality characters, and therefore I don't want to put them on the list.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I completely agree. It just doesn't, I can't knock off these like actual characters that have like journeys with our heroes and our, I can't shift any of this top 10 off for this like objectively awful species.
Yeah, I agree.
Like this thing that criticizes Clark's genocide while also committing like thousands of acts of their own genocide. Like, it's supposed to be happy. I don't really think it is, but I can't.
I just think it's too messy and it's too jam-packed into a final episode for me to say they're good villains. As far as, especially like we were just talking about how Bill was actually set up, and so it didn't feel like he came out of nowhere. These characters, I think, were set up within this season to a certain degree, but certainly not something that when I was watching season 5, I was expecting us to go in this direction.
Yeah, I did not think, it's a fresh start on a new planet. Aliens are gonna kill us, and we're gonna join a hive mind,
and it'll be a good thing.
And I'll be like, it'll be bittersweet. And I was like, no, not bittersweet.
All right, so we have our definitive villains of the 100 ranking list. Here we go. Number 10, Shadeheada. Number 9, Murphy Season 1. Number 8, Cage. Number 7, Dante. Number 6, Cadigan. Number 5, Ali and Jaha. Number 4, Russell. Number 3, Josephine. Number 2, Pike. And number 1, Blood Reyna. And obviously, we'll also show all these lists and things on the video version so people can look at them more easily.
Yes.
And on the100podcast.com if you want to look.
Yeah. Overall, this list is pretty like evenly matched between better, quote unquote, better early seasons and not as good later seasons.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of shows some consistency in this show of like having.
I think they have good villains.
Good villains, yeah. There's a reason we were, wanting to rank this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I also want to say that like season 2 is a weird one because I do feel like we have to put out Cage and Dante. And if you just made it the Mountain Men, I think they'd be a lot higher on the list. Because it's sort of Cage and Dante together that make a really good character. Yeah, like and also just the threat of the Mountain Men and everything they do.
Yeah. We cheated a little with Ali and Jaha.
We did. Do you want to switch it up and make Dante and Cage?
No, they had different motivations, and yes, while they had to like begrudgingly unite, it was their purposes were different. Yeah.
All right, let's get into our top 10 episode ranking. Again, I've listed what I've come up with now, and we will talk about episodes that I left off, why I added things, why I took things off. I actually changed things quite a bit, so there'll be lots to talk about. So at number 10, I have Anaconda, which is 708. Then I have at number 9, 108 Day Trip. Number 8, 602 Red Sun Rising. Number 7, 407 Gimme Shelter. Number 6, 308 Terms and Conditions. Number 5, 607 Nevermind. Number 4, 410 Die All Die Merrily. Number 3, 316 Perverse Instantiation Part 2. Number 2, 510 The Warrior's Will. And number 1, 216 Blood Must Have Blood Part 2. So here are the changes. I dropped one Hedda off the end here. I dropped Red Queen, and I dropped Nevermore. Nevermore, I think, is the most contentious of those choices.
Yes, it is. We will talk about it.
I added Day Trip back because I think it deserves it. Season 1 deserves some representation, and I think that was the best they had to offer, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I added Anaconda, and I added Perverse Instantiation back in. And I'm going to talk about that, actually. The more I've thought about Perverse Instantiation Part 2, and the more I think I've been thinking a lot about season finales and endings and stuff because of the series finale, I think that's a great episode. And I don't think I give it enough credit. Between the fact that it was all of our heroes on different planes of action working in interesting ways together to defeat a legitimately interesting villain. We went into the City of Light, which was a brand new look and different feel for the show. Clark was our protagonist and directly driving it. She made a choice that was directly impactful. We got to have her closure with Lexa, which I thought was much needed and well done. We have this thing of you don't ease pain, you overcome it, which directly, gives a very nice thesis and cohesive statement about this, about the season and about, and that the season is really saying something, I feel like, in this moment.
Yes.
They also have a great twist reveal of the world being ending. One of the few twist reveals that I don't think is, hurt in retrospect. Like,
yes.
I don't, season 4's time jump doesn't feel that great in retrospect. But this one I thought was great. Octavia killing Pike I thought was a good way too. I think
good in its badness, but you understand it even with all the repercussions. It makes sense. In retrospect, I was like, how did we drop this episode off the list? Like, I was kind of like surprised at us for sacrificing it. So I completely understand adding it back in. I agree, with Juan Heda being dropped off the list. As much as we enjoy that episode, it was in the number 10 slot. I think both of us were prepared for it to go away.
And I, to me, it's usurped both by Day Trip and Anaconda, which Day Trip, I think, it solidified really important relationships in the show. It had good drama and good comedy, and I just think it encapsulates season 1.
It does, and it also really is a good episode for the Bellamy and Clark co-leader relationship and giving them dimension. It has really good stuff for Octavia too, and having her character develop a little bit beyond more just I'm not listening to my brother. It was really sad for me when it fell off the list. And in retrospect, we needed a season 1 episode.
And to me, I think Anaconda is phenomenal in a lot of ways. I think that it was serving so many masters, and it did it really well. I think that it did such a good job of it spanned the past, present, and future of the show in a way that really worked, and that it set up what happened in the past while also explaining things that happened in the past, such as Tree Crew and the language and what happened with the bunker, while it also dealt directly with what was happening in the present as far as Bill and setting him up as a villain and explaining who he was and explaining things about why the flame was important now and
Mm-hmm.
why what the stones were and how he got where he got here.
Mm-hmm.
And then it really set up the future, which, whether you like the future or not, I think that's really impressive about how it set up Judgment and humanity not being ready and why Becca was killed. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, I think that was a sort of Herculean task that it hit all those points. And,
Absolutely. I think it's kind of telling that this is the episode from season 7 that made it onto the list.
Yeah.
The one that arguably had like the least to do with the current season.
Yeah.
Arguably.
Yeah.
And the most connection to like the past mythology.
Yeah.
It's really an episode about what makes this show good that was like earlier in the show.
I don't know that I'd agree with that personally. I actually think that it probably progressed things about the present and future more than a lot of other episodes did.
I agree. You're right.
Yeah.
It does have the most,
Yeah.
it gives context to it. It has the test stuff.
Yeah.
Like you're right. It does transition season 7, but I'm saying it transitions the last season through a blast from the past and through things that are familiar to us as viewers from earlier seasons of the 100.
All the while setting up brand new characters, brand new actors that are great. I just think, there are things that I wish there, things that I might have changed or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that it was a very solid episode that worked on multiple levels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, the only season 7 episode.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about that.
Yes.
So the other ones we had on the nomination lists were Etheria, The Garden, and The Last War. How do you feel about those?
I think I would have felt maybe a little different about Etheria had that, Bellamy's story not gone the way it went. Like, I have a hard time putting that episode on the list, with how it works in the season.
Yeah. Personally, I love Etheria. It would be in my top 10 favorite list.
Mm-hmm.
I don't obviously like where we went from there, but I thought it was incredibly well done. But I also think that one of the biggest faults, even beyond just what happens with Bellamy, is the whole vision thing doesn't make any sense even once we have the full picture.
Yeah.
Why
would
unlike some people don't like what Anaconda set up, but it set up something that makes sense in retrospect. And this is, why is Cadigan there? How did he tap into this? Was his mom an alien? Was he actually having a vision, or was it his proximity to the light? How did what was it, a simulation? And we just never, and that just ended up being cut because we didn't have Bellamy for as long as we thought it would be. Who knows? And to me, that's a big problem.
The fact is, the aliens say that they are not actually I'm not your daughter.
Yeah.
I'm not Callie. I'm not Lexa.
Yeah.
His vision of his mom doesn't say that.
Yeah.
She acts like his mom.
Yeah.
And it's also our first introduction to the glowing tree people, and I just can't honestly get over that visual.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I was like, this is it. This is what we're striving for.
Yeah.
It was a good episode. I really liked it overall. For me, I can't in good conscience put it in the top 10 episodes of the 100.
Yeah. Yeah.
Out of the 100 episodes, it is not for me in the top 10%.
Yeah. What about The Garden?
That was a really good episode. I really enjoyed it.
I think I see an argument for top 20. I part of it is also that it's one thing to talk about the Octavia half of that episode. The other half of that episode, especially in retrospect, isn't really that important. It's mostly just moving some things forward, but it's not exciting in retrospect once you already know everything. It's really plot heavy and not character heavy. And a lot of it also has to do with the time dilation, which really didn't matter.
Yeah. It would have, for me as well, it was a good episode, but not better than a lot of other ones.
Yeah. The Last War, again, has some of my favorite moments, but I think the alien thing is too much to let go of. That's my feeling there.
Yeah. Yeah. It is not the one of the best episodes of the show.
Yeah.
It works. It forces it in. I got emotional. It has good stuff.
Yeah.
But not good enough.
Yeah.
No. I don't even think it would be in my top 20 of the 100.
So, what do you want to do next? Do you want to talk about some of the other episodes that I didn't include? Do you want to talk about the order that I had?
I want to talk about Nevermore.
Okay.
To me, that is the thing where I'm like, how could you?
So I understand that. And my reasoning is, what are we taking off of the list for Nevermore? Because I do not want to take off Day Trip or Anaconda, and those are on the bottom there.
I know they are. So it would have to be something that we thought was better than that. I don't know how I feel about Red Sun Rising.
Really?
Okay,
let me remind you about Red Sun Rising.
Go for it.
So obviously this is the Red Sun episode, season 6. We have, Clark really dealing with her guilt and her feelings. We have Murphy, some good action stuff with Murphy and Bellamy trying to deal with this stuff. We have Echo dealing with some of her trauma. But then we have 2 other tertiary stories that I think are great too, which is the team up of Maddie, Raven, and Dioza. And then we also have phenomenal Octavia moments here.
Where she wants one crew to turn on her and kill her.
Yeah. I think that's a really good episode. I would be willing to trade it with Nevermore.
I'm not saying it isn't a good episode.
Yeah.
Like, for the record, I'm not saying it isn't good. I just think that Nevermore is so, in a lot of ways, it's a lot like Red Sun Rising.
Yeah. It
kind of hits a lot of the same, like, emotional beats. And, I mean, maybe not so much for, like, Octavia. It's really the same emotional beats for, like, Clark and that group.
Yeah.
I don't know.
How do you feel about trading it for Gimme Shelter?
Oh, Gimme Shelter is the Black Rain episode.
I think it's phenomenal for Bellamy. I believe it's also when Amori is doing her con job, which I like, but wouldn't necessarily say is top 10 worthy. And then it also
out of her,
has
like, survival move.
It also has Octavia and Ilian's weird cave
God,
shit.
You're right. That was that episode.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it was a good Harper episode.
Yeah, that's true.
But then they kind of, like, the thing... It puts Harper on the path of I don't want to live anymore.
Which I honestly kind of liked that.
I did too, but then they kind of like
put it back.
Pull it back, and it's better when she can. 602 was also a good Bellamy episode. He also had like
but it was more rage filled than
the tragedy of Gimme Shelter.
I don't know. I'd say to me, Red Sun Rising is a more all around quality episode. But
then if we drop Gimme Shelter, the only episode from season 4 on the list is Die All Die Merrily, which isn't really about like our characters in the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's leave it.
Let's leave what?
Let's leave this list.
The list as is? You don't want to put Nevermore?
You mean Nevermore. Nevermind is on this list. I don't know what
I'm willing to sacrifice Red Sun Rising if you think that Nevermore.
No, you made a good argument for Red Sun Rising.
Yeah.
You're right. I think it's Gimme Shelter. This is hard. But yeah, I want to get rid of Gimme Shelter. Nevermore going back on the list. Is it swapping places with Gimme Shelter, or is Red Sun Rising better than that?
I'm going to say put it at number 6. Above Terms and Conditions.
Better than Terms and Conditions. So how do we let it get off the list in the
I don't know, because I didn't know what to do. Do you agree with that? It used to be like episode 2.
You're right. Yeah. No, it should be. It is better than Terms and Conditions.
All right, so number 6.
Yes. Okay. Right. We got this.
Okay, but there are a couple other episodes I want to talk about.
All right.
Eden, the premiere of season 5. Really, really good. Until it isn't, in my opinion. Until we jump into the present. And then I think the space crew stuff is clunky. I think that Maddie's dialogue is not great when we're in the modern times. It feels like a lopsided episode. I wish it had all been about Clark and Maddie. I see an argument for it still, but I can't take off anything from the list for it.
No.
Okay. I also want to put forward Damocles Part 2, given that a lot of people feel like that should be the series finale. It has such a great ending.
I mean, the thing is, we have episodes from season 6 on this that we consider top 10 worthy episodes.
Yeah.
While I, at this point, kind of do feel, not kind of, I do feel that the season 5 ending would have been a better series finale.
Yeah.
There are good season 6 episodes.
And we have a season 7 episode.
And a season 7 episode. Yeah. But let's really talk, like one after the other. And the season 6 episodes, while I'm like, they shouldn't exist, they do, and they're really good. Yeah. And the season 5 finale would be on this list if there were only 5 seasons. Yeah. But there are more. And I don't think that episode is better than some of these other ones.
Yeah. The other thing is, if it's to me, it's a similar argument with Eden, where if the season 5 finale was like just the last 20 minutes, it would be like number 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it wasn't.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it is boring and kind of lame.
Yeah.
In the first half.
Not enough. Yeah.
And then Prime Fire, I think, is the last one I wanted to mention. So this is the season 4 finale.
Yeah.
Everybody teaming up to get to the ring. Clark sacrifices herself. Then we see the flash forward.
Yeah.
A lot of people have Prime Fire as like their number 1, definitely in their top 10. It's not in our top 10.
No, it's just not definitively, like, again, one of the like most character, like, it has emotional character things, but it's not, it is a little too like action heavy for me to.
I would say, and to me the action I don't find interesting.
Right.
I would say that the 2 Bellamy and Clark scenes are very, very good scenes. They are also like, 4 minutes of the episode. So like, again, this, I don't think overall it stands up, the same way like something like Anaconda or Day Trip. All throughout, I think really gets the job done. Yeah. So I guess that's everything on our episode list. You want to read the final ranking here?
Yeah, guys, this is the top 10 definitive episodes of the 100.
According to us.
We
are the definitive voice. No one else can challenge this.
No, not allowed. Definitely not in the comments. All right. So number 10, 708, Anaconda. Number 9, 108, Day Trip. Number 8, 602, Red Sun Rising. Number 7, 308, Terms and Conditions. Number 6, 311, Nevermore. Number 5, 607, Nevermind. Number 4, 410, Die All, Die Merrily. Number 3, 316, Perverse Instantiation, Part 2. Number 2, 510, The Warrior's Will. And number 1, 216, Blood Must Have Blood, Part 2.
All right. We hit every season. And season 3 has the most episodes. So remember that as we go into our season rankings.
Doodaloo. Wait, Dan, use the soundboard.
Oh, it's not on. They're laughing at us.
Okay. No, it's the moment's gone. Right. This is my last chance to encourage you to use the soundboard, and
I apologize.
And you let me down.
I did. All right.
Okay.
So, ranking the seasons worst to best. I've come up with my list, and we can argue about it. And this is not my favorites. This is what I think quality-wise the ranking should be.
Much like we think with episodes, not necessarily our favorites, but...
And an example of that would be that, to me, season 3 is one of my favorites. It would go very high, but I know it has a lot of issues, so we'll talk about that. So my ranking is season 7 as the worst, then season 5, then season 1, then season 3, then season 6, then season 4, then season 2. What are your thoughts?
Interesting. I understand, season 3 has some really low lows. Like it really lets us down. And
whether it be Lexa or Lincoln or Bellamy's arc or
Murphy and Antari.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot to, or even, just some of the excesses in violence, I would argue, in this season. A lot of the self-harm and things like that.
Yeah.
But I also think it has some of the best stuff.
Yeah. It has some of the best. And looking at it, I'm like, is season 6 better than season 3?
To me, the lows are too low to put it above season 6, because I don't really have any major problem with season 6.
Yeah. Season 6 isn't a season of major problems. Yeah. It's just like, it already has the issue of Clark not really being the protagonist. Yeah. It already has issues of like,
What do you mean by it already has?
Well, like season 7 also had the issue of Clark not being a protagonist. Yeah. It started not in season.
Yeah, but the difference between 6 and 7 is that 6, he is the he has Nevermind,
right? And she's still on screen even as she's like Josephine. Yeah. I guess that's a fair point.
To me, it's the complicated difference between the fact that I would say season 6 is like pretty consistently an 8. Whereas 3 has moments that are a 10 and moments that are a 2. So I'm like, how do you balance that? I really don't know.
Yeah.
I personally put season 6 above season 3.
Okay. What is the worst to best? Yeah, I guess I'm not going to disagree with this order.
How do you feel about where season 1 is, which is worse than season 3, better than season 5?
Yeah. Season 5 was not that good a season.
Yeah.
If the show ended at, 5 seasons, I'm pretty sure we would be discussing if it or season 1 is in the last slot.
Yeah.
And it just lets you down a few too many times.
And then to me, the reason season 1 isn't higher is because I think it is very messy at the beginning.
Absolutely.
It has a lot of dialogue problems, a lot of acting problems from numerous sources as they were figuring their shit out.
Inconsistency. Yeah.
I don't think the Grounders were nearly as interesting villains as some of the later season villains. I think Finn was awful. The whole love triangle was awful. So even though I think it had a lot of good points to it, and I understand why it might be someone's favorite or high up in their favorite rankings, I can't say that it's high up in the quality rankings.
Yes. Yeah. I completely agree.
All right.
The bones were good, but it can't be better than other seasons that have a lot of actual work and emotion that is just more consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you happy with what our ranking is?
I suppose so. Even though season 4 for me is a very frustrating season.
Yeah.
It has a lot of here's the problem, we're fixing it, never mind, here's a new problem, and we're going in circles. There's a lot of good stuff about it, and a lot of good character
and
stuff.
I feel like in a lot of ways it was a good a make good on season 3.
Yeah.
I would put it in my favorite list. It would be way down there. I don't know that I've ever been able to perfectly put my finger on why.
I know why.
Why?
Riley. Bye, bitch.
Yeah.
Glad you're dead.
And it still has the big issues with Gasper.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. But overall, I definitely think it is one of the most consistent seasons. And that's what really the top 3 come down to. 6, 4, and 2 are just consistently solid.
Yeah.
And some of these other ones are just so messy.
Yeah. Season 2, we had issue. It only has the one episode in the top 10.
Yeah.
But it's the number 1 episode. Yeah. And a lot of season 2, it was this is just a good season. I can't pull out an episode and be all right, here's why it stands out. It's a really bingeable season. It just works so well.
Yeah.
It is absolutely. I feel so bad for the 100. How they hit their perfect season or near perfect season at their second season.
Yeah.
And I just, they never quite got that good.
I mean, but that's so true for so many shows if you think about it. It's sad.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
All right. So, I mean, that's the list.
That's the
Do
list.
you feel like we need to read it again?
No.
All right.
No, I don't. I think in a lot of ways it's very intuitive, even if people are yelling at us from home about how we like snubbed season 1 or season 5.
All right. Feedback?
Feedback.
We got quite a few lovely messages from you guys. I'm on so many topics, so I'm excited for Olga to read a lot.
And I am so sorry to people whose feedback didn't make it in this time. Like it was really hard reading it and people being like writing in for the first time, be like, oh, I want to include you. And people being like consistently writing in every time. And I'm like, I really want to include you. But, you know, we would be here for like. Yeah.
As it is, I'm like, well, we have a lot of emails that are pretty long. But here we go.
Here we go. Thank you, everybody, for writing in. So first, going to read a few emails that we didn't get to in our last war review because we really we picked them out and we want to say them.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah. So from Sapphire 2009 via YouTube, Bellamy died because he believed in this crap. 7:15. Now, it's proven that he was right all along. Bellamy Blake, the male lead for 7 seasons, died for literally nothing. And Bellarke's co-leading friendship and platonic soulmates didn't mean anything in the end. Yeah,
this is a point that I also talked about on Twitter, is even if you don't care about them on a romantic level, it was drilled into our heads repeatedly that they were the most important relationship on the show. There are numerous quotes from the creators about that.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty clear from the show itself, too.
Yeah. You don't have, the mantra that I roll my eyes at, but nonetheless was, hammered in the head and the heart.
Yeah.
Guys, over and over and over again.
Yeah. Well, and so many people were like, oh, I don't want them to be romantic because it's so great to have such a good platonic female-male friendship at the center of the show. Well, we don't end the show with that positive thing either.
Or it mattering, at all.
Yeah.
So.
If I was going to answer why did he die, it seems like from the interviews that Jason is saying he died to show how fucked up Clark is, and that if we were the Mountain Men, it would be the same thing, and that we're supposed to think of Bellamy as just another victim of Clark's, but this time it hurts us. Again, character assassinating of both sides.
It's revisionist history of how we thought of
Mount Weather and Clark as a human being.
Yes. Yeah. I'm like, sorry, wasn't reading her actions that time as good either. You know? You know, there's been a lot of Twitter social media action that I do want to mention with New York Comic Con and paid meet and greet web chats and things like that.
I don't think this was from New York Comic Con. It was some other Comic Con.
Oh, okay. Well, the point is that from these
it was the same weekend, so it was confusing. Yeah.
And it's all virtual, so who the hell knows? In a couple of paid videos that Bob did with fans, he said that Bellamy and Clark were written as a written romantically, despite what actually happened. And that's how we were told to perform it, and that's what we did. So it would have made sense if they would have at least talked about their feelings. So that's a direct quote from Bob at these interviews. And there's a lot of people being like, why is he bringing this up? Why is he needs to get over it? Clexa is canon. That's not really
the point.
Yeah.
To me, it's more of, it's an important thing as far as the writing of the show. I'm not saying that one side should win over the other side or whatever. I mean, I don't even know what my argument would be whether one side or the other should win, because on the one hand, I'm like, I think that Clexa deserves to win because of just the ethical side of outside of the show stuff,
representational and connections,
and all that stuff. But I also think storytelling wise, Bellarke at least deserved to happen.
We felt like that could have happened.
I didn't necessarily need to be endgame.
Right. But we are not we've made no secret of us not being shippers, but we've also been so when are Bellamy and Clark gonna get together? So
I mean, and the thing is, if you had asked me at the end of season 2, I probably would have said I am a shipper. I ship Clark and Lexa.
Mm-hmm.
And I fucking loved Clark and Lexa.
Yeah.
But I was also, I'd say at least partially because I wasn't in that community, I was able to slowly let it go. And I don't blame anyone who wasn't able to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
We watched season 3. We watched season 3 as it happened.
Yeah.
And when when I caught up to you on season 2, I was like, Clark and Lexa, yeah. And then, we were pissed.
And I
with
was
season
pissed
3.
I was pissed at Bellamy until like season 5 at least.
Yeah.
So like
we were like, there's enough like time and distance, and it feels like what they're writing is romantic.
Yeah.
Like we saw the bones of that. So people are saying Bob is lying, we don't know, but at the very least, they were platonic soulmates at some point.
I think,
and
I think assuming he's lying is kidding yourself. The show, like honestly, I cannot understand a point of view in which you watch this show and don't see romantic subtext.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really, it's yelling at you.
Yeah, there's. I just like can't get over the season 5. Like, she must be really important to you. She is.
Yeah.
Like the she is moment. I'm like, what were they doing?
Well, they knew exactly what they were doing there, and
baiting shippers.
Yeah, baiting, or maybe at that point they thought maybe we will do, like, who knows? I'm sure that they went back and forth about what they were going to do with this like 17 times.
Yeah.
And they were not going to end it with Bellamy dying.
No, and that's the thing. Like, no matter what they were going between, romance or a platonic friendship, they were fucking important to each other. And Bellamy died because he believed in this crap, and it is pointless. Like, what the fuck? Like, it just doesn't make sense.
I mean, I will say at least, I wouldn't call it, I don't believe, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't think that they were baiting you and thinking the whole time, well, we're just going to totally fuck you guys up. Like,
from the beginning, you don't think they were planning on that?
I don't think, maybe they were never planning on actually having them romantically get together, but I think they were planning on the end of season 5, which is them holding each other, or or Bellamy being on the beach in the finale. Like, I don't think that it was the plan to kill him. They decided to kill him because of behind the scenes reasons, and then the way they did it was horrific and stupid,
horrifying.
But that's a separate discussion.
It's just it's a major letdown. Yeah. So on that cheerful no, moving on. All right, so Zuko by the 100pod at gmail.com writes in, I would have relished the possibility that Cadogan finished his sentence without being headshot by Clark. Looking back, I can't help but wonder what response he would have given. Would he, despite his egotistical demeanor, have been truthful in his answers at the very end for all mankind? Who's to say? But frankly, I'm disappointed he wasn't able to complete the test. Which also begs the question that the very beings that are powerful enough to grant ascension, destroy and wipe out civilizations, and be deities, are they now not powerful enough to, 1, prevent a second person entering the test room during a test, interrupt it and kill the very individual who is taking it? I know it makes for great television, but I find it hard to believe that the show will build an image of these powerful beings, then make it so that they cannot protect a person taking their test, or even stop an attempt to kill a person who is taking the test. It is the most important test one could ever take. Therefore, we do expect a level of security measures to be in place that would prevent interruptions.
So a few things about this. I mean, I think these are valid points, especially wanting to hear what Bill would have said a little bit longer. No matter what, I think he would have failed, but because he's Bill. But I think the argument would be they don't have security because this has never happened before, as they, make very clear. Clark's the first person to ever try to do something like this.
I'm sure they'll add security for other species.
Or the other question is, will they? Because to a certain degree, that is part of the test, right? Like
you're
they
supposed to fail if you shoot.
They don't care about like protecting Bill's ability to take the test to a certain degree, because they're testing all of humanity. And if somebody else, like, I don't know if they would have cared if Clark and Raven came in together necessarily. I mean, who knows? But I would just say that they just they're way more detached. They're more like, oh, that's interesting. But also I guess they're judgmental about it. So I guess my point is I don't think they care enough to stop that from happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it would have been an automatic failure. It should have been.
I mean, they don't care about Bill.
No.
So why would they protect him?
Right.
Yeah.
I think that you're completely right. As for like something I just thought of, you know how the judge, as Lexa says, humans, you've added so much to us already. I kind of wish that like they would have said something along the lines of like, and now we're changing the test. Like, you know, given them a little bit of growth, maybe made them reflect on how they do things and how it's not right and not fair. And like maybe, you know, definitively said that like you guys
changed us.
You
as
changed
much as
us.
We changed you.
Right. Like you proved that this is not the right way to do it. Like it wasn't just Clark or Bill taking the test. It was like Raven talking to them and then Octavia on the field. Like I don't know. I kind of just wish that would have been really good. Like maybe humanity is the last group you commit genocide on. You know,
even if they just like sort of left it a little bit open and just like alluded to like we're even considering changing how we take the tests or perform the tests
or what forward. The test is or blah blah blah. Yeah, like that would have been good.
Yeah, it would have. That's a small thing that I think would have helped a little bit.
Yeah, and you know, very doable and capable of thinking that up, guys. Yeah. So to me, that's kind of like the same thing as not same thing, but along the lines of like Bill not saying his actual like answers, not quite getting there. Do you want Bill's answer?
I mean, I feel like we know Bill's answer.
Yeah.
They had written the character well enough that we know his answer. That said, I would have liked, we talked a lot in the previous podcast about what is the show saying about love. And because they didn't let him finish that and then have the entity debate with him, I don't feel like we got the end of that message about love.
Yes.
So even though I know that he basically would be like, oh, I got rid of love because I think it's destructive, or if he was being honest, which he had to be honest, he would say, because it hurt me too much.
Yeah.
Or I was at my worst because I lashed out because of love. One of those things. Like we know why he is the way he is.
I understand Bill.
Yeah.
They've done enough to help us understand.
It's more, and to a certain degree, we also understand that the entity thinks love is a good thing. But what we don't understand is the nuance of what the show is saying there.
Yeah.
Especially because right after that, he gets shot in the head because of love. So like,
I don't think hearing Bill's answer would have given that definitive answer about what the show is saying.
But the discussion might have.
And we never really got that. So, I do think he would have answered truthfully. I think he's, and still failed, he's an egomaniac and would have doomed humanity. Stephen, by the100pod@gmail.com, writes in, first time writing in. In a disappointing season, I think they absolutely nailed the ending. The episode was good, but how it ended was one of the greatest final scenes of a TV show I have ever seen. U2's Bad was a great song choice, too. Does part of you guys wonder if they all 100% came back just for Clark? That was definitely part of it, but I feel they all could have come back since they wanted to live out the rest of their own lives all together as well. Also, wish there was one final scene with them all digging graves or something, then showing all the graves of each character with a brief overlay of one of their old scenes. That's how I would have ended the show, with the Traveler's Blessing in the background.
I don't think everybody stayed or came back just for Clark.
Yeah.
And I think that they purposely give a few lines in there to explain why certain people are there.
Yeah.
They have Levitt say, I would have liked to have lived first. I think that's why we have Levitt and part of why we have Octavia.
Yeah.
I think the whole Murphy and Maury sequence of, I just want to spend time with you, and the way they mirror that with Miller and Jackson. Also, again, I think part of that is still Clark, but I also think part of it is that they see part of their character growth is seeing the impermanence of life as being what matters, as long as you're with the people you love.
Yes.
I would also say that Hope and Jordan talk in multiple episodes about why they feel like they haven't really lived life yet. Echo was wrong. I mean, certain pieces of this are just kind of pushed in there to, create a moment.
Yeah. I could see Indra and Gaia of like, their relationship as mother and daughter being like worth.
But I also think Gaia and Indra are people that really do respect Clark.
Yeah.
And would
come back.
Definitely Gaia, I think, would come back for her.
Yeah.
Indra maybe, but also once Gaia goes back, Indra would go.
Indra would go too. Yeah.
I think to me the most like forced, silly aspect of this in some ways is the fact that nobody else came back.
Yeah.
I think, including in other species and stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
I think that realistically there would be a lot of people who would come back
because of the same reasons that we're saying. Like some of these people would have wanted to live their lives and would have wanted to like.
That's not like unique to them.
That's apparently it is. Apparently it is unique to humanity according to the aliens. This is like. Even though they're familiar with
I'm not even
love.
saying unique to humanity. I'm saying unique to these characters. Other parts of humanity would have the same thoughts.
Well, or would they or wouldn't they? Because it's like you look at the Elegis and like they're prisoners and they were like, went through some shit. Yeah. The Sanctomites, the ones who are still alive, they've been through some shit that is like.
Well, somebody pointed out the fact that it's like, wouldn't the child of Gabriel want to death his life? And.
Yeah, but he was also incredibly traumatized.
Yeah, I mean, I guess him overcoming.
He was a kid.
Yeah, I think Maddie's also a wishy-washy thing of like she hasn't really gotten to live life either, and the real explanation is she wouldn't have someone to love her age, and she
would be the youngest person left ever.
Yeah, I know, but easily she could die for whatever reason before other people. I mean, the whole you just don't think about it too hard.
Yeah, and that's
unfortunate.
That's a problem that we shouldn't. A grand philosophical show. Don't think about it too hard. Okay, Lucy via the 100podcast@gmail.com writes in, "Hello from Australia. I only started watching the 100 last year, but have enjoyed binging all of your podcasts. I'm a passionate and devoted member of the Klexa Clown Crew. I thought I would write in on how I feel about Lexa coming back, but not as herself, from the perspective of an LGBT plus viewer who was particularly impacted by her character. I was obviously overjoyed to see Alicia Debnam Carey return for the final episode, but was initially disappointed that she was not playing Lexa. I felt slightly cheated that the show would go to the trouble of bringing Alicia back, for her to not be herself. However, after thinking it through more, it makes sense. There would be no plausible way to bring the character back, as she is well and truly gone, having been killed a total of 4 times. Instead, her return was a final nod to the great legacy of this character. Lexa appeared because she was Clark's greatest teacher, source of biggest failure, and her greatest love. She taught Clark to harden herself, but also allowed her to love and care and opened herself up in the process. Clark couldn't save Lexa, which she could consider her biggest failure. And the last one is pretty self-explanatory. Lexa was the one for Clark, and the show just keeps reminding us, which I love. Yes, I'm crying whilst writing this. On a side note, I would just like to say that even though Bell arc would have seemed to be a logical conclusion for their character arcs, I'm glad it didn't happen. There are so little positive women-loving women relationships out there on television. I'm overjoyed that Clark's relationships didn't fall into the trope of she had a gay phase, but now she's past it and dating the boy she was always meant to be with. That's one good thing to come out of Bellamy's death, in my opinion, especially as I never really connected with his character. Even though Lexa wasn't herself, it gives Clark a final chance to say goodbye. Her hugging Lexa, even though she knows it's not really her, tears all around. Clark has lost literally everything. Her mom, her dad, her daughter, her best friends, her home, multiple lovers, and her soulmate. She really needed that fucking hug, man. All in all, I'm okay with Lexa coming back for the finale, even if it's just her body, because I don't feel like myself or other Klexa shippers and LGBT fans were exploited in the process. I think it's a logical plot point and incredibly emotional, and a final send-off for this incredibly powerful character. I'm not even mad at Jason. I do believe that he cares about these characters and has tried hard to give them good storylines. He's only human in the end, and I'm thankful that he gave us this last chance to say farewell to Lexa.
All right. So, I mean, I always like hearing, this point of view because it's not ours. I do have a few things I disagree with, at least.
Okay.
Respectfully, I hope. I think, to me, it's hard to argue that her biggest failure isn't killing Bellamy. But that's my personal opinion. But obviously, her greatest love and her greatest teacher, I think it is Lexa. Yeah. I also, an unfortunate argument that, or place that we get into when talking about Clark's bisexuality is the struggle between like not wanting the trope of she had a gay phase,
right,
but also not saying she can't end up with a guy because that's bi erasure too.
Yeah, that's biphobia.
Yeah, that's and so I think that's really a difficult place to be in, where I don't blame people for like not wanting it to seem like a phase,
right?
But at the same point, I'm like, well, the fact that they had her be with multiple women and multiple men, and we saw how much she didn't just like hook up with Lexa.
Right.
She loved Lexa.
Yeah.
To me, I don't think her ending up with Bellamy would have been falling into those tropes.
Right.
But
yeah, I think that there is enough going on, in Clark's, casual, albeit connected relationship to Nyla to like show it wasn't a phase.
Yeah.
There's a lot of homophobia and biphobia in the 100 fandom.
Yeah.
And they are often like clashing with each other.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating as, people who are just like there for the story aspect to like advocate for one thing over the other without seeming like we're like
falling.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I see where both sides are coming from there, but I definitely think, and I think it just comes down to the broader issues of representation and that fact that people are clinging to these female-female relationships that don't end up falling into these tropes.
Yeah.
But yeah, ultimately, bi representation has its troubles too.
Yes.
And saying that she couldn't end up with a guy, I'm not necessarily saying that this person specifically, but like there has been a lot of biphobia around she can't end up with a guy.
Yeah. But at the same time, I completely understand how like the Clark and Lexa relationship and the Lexa character have like helped so many people come out and identify themselves as like lesbians. I think you, Lucy, like you wrote in about that as well. I'm sorry if we had to cut it for time, but like yeah, it's this thing of like these characters are important. This relationship is important to people emotionally. So I understand why like you don't necessarily want the competition of like another as important romantic relationship for Clark.
Well, and also I want to point out, I mean, especially I think if you go back to earlier podcasts and stuff, this has been something that my thoughts have evolved on as I've learned and talked to other people more. Like, I do think my initial reaction, especially closer to when Lexa died, was to say, I don't want her to end up with Bellamy because that will erase the female-female thing that I thought was so great here. But, it took me a while to sort of understand the whole feelings around that.
Yeah, I agree. It's a complicated topic, and in a lot of ways, if there was just like more representation of all of these things with less like tropes related to them, then I think everything would be like a lot better.
Easier.
Yep. Yeah, a lot easier.
Ain't that the truth?
M via the100podcast.com says, "Hey guys, long-time listener, first-time writer. I'm honestly quite frustrated and disappointed by the season overall, primarily because I really like the premise of the test in the finale, and I feel like it would have made for an amazing premise for the whole season, rather than just a weird, unexplained afterthought."
All right, so we're going to pause here because this is a spot where I put some notes of my own in here. And something a lot of people say, oh, the alien thing came out of nowhere, or, it just kind of was like such a, weird Deus Ex Machina or whatever you want to call it. I have a list here of all the ways they built up to this throughout the season. And I want to, on the one hand, I'm not saying that people are wrong to feel like this came out of nowhere. On the other hand, I think something that they do deserve to be credited for is the way they progressively disclosed information and is the way they built up this mystery and gave you the pieces you needed, and we just weren't connecting the dots. And so I'm going to go through this really quick and say, so in the season 6 finale, we are set up the stones and we're alluding to Bill. Then later on, Gabriel, early in the season, thinks that the stones were probably made by ancient, technologically advanced aliens. So like, I think episode 2 or 3, he brings up aliens.
Yeah.
Then we go to Bardo and hear about the Bardoans, another race of aliens, failing the last war. So we're hearing about the last war and being gem-9'd, which obviously is what they literally do to people who fail. Then we actually see the Bardoans, proving that there are aliens in this universe of the 100. So pretty early on, we are confirmed that there are aliens. Again, this is all within this season, so you can make the argument of we should have seen aliens in season 5 or whatever.
6 or whatever. Yeah. But even the person writing in is saying, like, this entire last season should have been about the test.
Yeah.
So.
We get lots of hints building up the Second Dawn and how they're connected to the disciples. And then we have the Bill reveal. And the Bill reveal, I think, is very well done because it uses cryo, which is something that had been previously established on the show.
Yes.
Then the prequel, we have the prequel episode, which sets up the stone setting off to the last war. But we also see the light. We hear about judgment and humanity not being ready. So at this point, we know that what the season is aiming towards is this light and judgment. And we know aliens exist. So that's episode 8. Then Jordan discovers that it's a test, not a war. Then in Etheria, we see there's evidence of transcendence. They literally see the light creatures that are, we see that creatures are literally turned to light. And we see what happens when you transcend. So by the end of Etheria, which is episode 11, despite the issues that we've talked about with the weird visions and shit, we know everything we need to know by episode 11. We know aliens exist. We know transcendence is real. We know that it's a test and that it's judgment of you as a race. And if you fail the test, you get gem-9'd. And if you succeed, you get transcended. That's basically everything.
Yeah.
I mean, you could argue we don't necessarily know transcendence is real because people thought it was a simulation and things like that. But but the show is showing you transcend,
They're writing it.
Yeah.
It's all there.
Yeah.
Just it's stepwise, but we still had, a back third where everything was on the table.
Yeah. Well, and the question so we knew that the stone was probably made by aliens. We knew that once you use the stone, you would get a test where you would be judged as a race. Who would be judging you if not for ancient aliens who made the stones?
This show belongs on the Discovery Channel or whatever, the History Channel, whatever. Not CW. Yeah.
I'm just saying, I don't think people give them enough credit for how they laid things out.
Yeah. It's just, there's a lot going on in that last episode. All right. So I'll get, fair, good layout, Dan. Let's get back into it. The whole season was so disorganized and just action driven for no reason. What was the point of the stuff on Sanctum?
Nothing.
What was the Shade got to eat cookies for the first time in his life?
Sanctum was just character based, and so in that way, I do think that they wasted a lot of time that could have been connected more to the broader alien storylines while still being character based, just not on Sanctum.
What was the point of all the jumping between Bardo and the rest of the planets?
Nothing.
To get Eliza off the show. I think they could have raised really interesting questions if the audience and characters fully understood the stakes of the last war and test. And if we actually had any information about that random species and what transcendence actually means. With all the technology our characters have seen, why couldn't Bardo develop some more convincing propaganda? Why did our characters find it so hard to believe? By Bardo, I think they mean the disciples. Yeah. Why would a species communicate only through mystical visions? Is transcending to a new species worth no longer being human? What is fundamentally human and what will be lost? Why would Clark's friends choose to come back to Earth instead of just commemorating her forever in their new forms? Why can't these creatures bring back the dead? Why didn't Clark's friends and Maddie Mercy kill her instead of leaving her alone or giving up immortality to be with her? So many questions. could have been explored if it wasn't left as a mystery. I wanted to see a discussion between our main characters connecting this choice to the other choices they've made in the past, like the City of Light or the Mind Drives on Sanctum or Cryosleep. Yeah. I wanted to see how people made the choice to transcend or stay behind. I wanted to see the disciples question whether Cadigan's psychopathic tyranny is worth it, especially since many of them had no mystical experiences, presumably. I feel like, at the very least, the last episode should have been split up into multiple episodes as our different characters made their decisions, especially since I find it weird that Clark's daughter left her because she thought her life on Earth would be bad, while other characters, like Hope and Echo, for example, who had no serious connection to Clark, basically gave up immortality for her, knowing they will eventually grow old and die out. Like, is there no sex in this new state? So many questions. You're having sex with every being in
I don't
the
think
hive.
there's bodies, so no. I don't think there's sex.
No, brain sex.
Brain sex.
Metaphysical sex.
Ooh, yes, like how Athena has children. So, lots to discuss there. I think you have a lot of valid points. I think there's lots that I would have liked to know more about, and 100% I think the finale should have been 3 episodes, 3 parts. There was plenty that you could have called out of those early episodes to make way for it.
Yeah. How are there so many part 1 and part 2?
But not here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird.
Well, I mean, again, I think a lot of it has to do with behind the scenes stuff, because they wouldn't have spent so long on Echo and things like that if they had everybody they needed. So, there's always that caveat. I do think the other answer to a lot of your questions is they wanted it to be a metaphor. They want it to be an allegory, and so they don't want to get into the minutia, because the more you know, the more questions you have, and the less strong the allegory gets.
Yeah.
As it is, the allegory isn't very strong because of the fact that becoming a hive mind isn't a good thing. Like, the allegory is supposed to be that once humanity is able to overcome tribalism and is able to work together and overcome their cycle of violence, they can transcend to become something greater and to finally find peace and evolve as a species. That is like the message in the allegory, but the problem is that doing it the way they did, even with as little as information as we have, already makes it these other messages of, oh, humanity went extinct and got assimilated. Like, I don't think they wanted to go, dive deep into who are these aliens, because to them, the aliens don't matter. The aliens are a means to an end.
They're beings that are there to act as judges, and let that be it.
And why did people choose to come back and others didn't? Because that made for a positive, happy U2 song.
That's more impactful for Clark and emotional than seeing a bunch of randos we've never seen before. Yeah,
but also it's more impactful for Clark to see that they made that choice than it is for us to be like, so Indra, why did you decide while you're in the glowing light and have no body to come down?
I don't want to see their hive space. Like, I don't want that visual. Like, that answers that's an answer to a question that wouldn't work. Again,
I think a lot of these questions are super valid, and then they also poke so many holes in what we got. But also, certain pieces I understand why they didn't do. Other pieces I'm like, I understand, but it's still bullshit.
This was a hell of a choice. Is kind of what it comes down to, and there was no way they were gonna please everybody with this direction.
But I think there was a way to potentially, do something closer to what Lost did. Where the whole season had the flash sideways, and so even though it was a mystery and we didn't know really where it was going, you could then look back at the full season and sort of see more of the bigger picture. Even that I don't think was perfect. But
they could have done a simulation light thing that would have been kind of like the test in action. Is that what you're saying?
Some sort of way of peeking into the future throughout without fully giving it. I don't know. I haven't really thought this through, but some way of, without telling you everything, giving you little breadcrumbs of who these aliens are. Again, we just read some breadcrumbs, so I really don't know what I'm saying.
There could have been a better way. than saving this in this way for the last episode.
Again, if it was the final 3 episodes that have so much less of an issue, it's the fact that it literally is all in the last 40 minutes.
It's hard to stomach. Okay. We don't have all the answers.
No.
Jay via the100pod@gmail.com writes in, "Hi guys, thanks so much for the pods. I would have never understood season 7 without you. Well, it was a mess at times. Glaring inconsistencies and plot holes. If Levitt and Echo were healed, why wasn't Raven's leg fixed?"
Again, I would say no logical reason, just a message-wise, we don't want to heal her leg because then we're erasing disabilities. You could argue that she learned that pain is important and that it's part of her, similar to what Amori says in this City of Light.
Yes.
To me, there's a difference there because like chronic pain's different than like the hand thing. Yes, I'm visually impaired, and I would say that my vision is part of who I am and has shaped who I am. If someone could magically fix my eyes, I would let them do that.
Right.
But not everybody would.
But not everyone would. It's a highly personal thing is kind of what it comes down to. I don't know. Yeah. Hand wave. What about Allegius 3?
That's a great question.
It's a great question. Maybe prequel answers. Maybe.
I doubt it.
I know.
That to me is the hugest left hanging thread, is the fact that Allegius 3 was going on missions to the different planets, and that it dropped people off on Skyring, it dropped people off on Sanctum, and that it was supposed to go to all the other planets, and we have no idea where that mothership ended up.
Mm-hmm. Did it end up on Etheria and crash there? Show us the thing. Maybe that's where Bellamy found like cloaks and
I don't know. Or whatever. Did it get to Bardo and the Bardoans killed them or something? Like I don't know.
Yeah, I wish we just tie up that loose end.
Yeah.
The Sanctum story barely moved for weeks on end, and Bardo was incomprehensible and disconnected. Mm-hmm. The treatment of Clark and Bellamy sucked and ripped the heart out of the show. As we've Oh my. Okay. Many of our crew found ways to do better, but Clark, ground down by responsibility and loss, was reduced to an emotional mess, unable to employ logic and thought, and having one-hitter rampages. Why did our female lead get to be the only one not to be able to transcend and unable to relate to Maddie until it was too late? This is not our compassionate, honest, heroic, clever Clark, and we have followed her for so long. And Bellamy. I want to know the reason for the last-minute decision to kill him in this way. It makes no sense to wreck your own show like this. Bellamy deserved better. Yeah.
I mean, to me, this is a classic piece of arrogance. Like, I honestly... I think there is some audience contempt there, but I don't know that it's contempt as in, like, I want to fuck them over as much as it's I don't think they're as smart as I am, and I'm going to show... this is a smart thing to do, and it's a good story thing to do, and they'll either get it or they'll get out, or like, and I don't think it was a smart story thing to do.
No. There's more to it than that, but at the same time, I can't help but feel that is involved.
I mean, when we talk specifically about how he killed him, I'm not talking about the choice to kill him, which might have been forced in one way or another, depending on behind the scenes stuff.
Right.
But as far as how the killing happened.
Yeah. And also, like, who Clark is as a character, apparently. Like, if you didn't realize this was her the whole time, like, it wasn't her the whole time. It wasn't. You kind of said that already. Yeah. You had that story.
Yeah.
Anyway. Why show us the flame is indestructible in the prequel and then destroy it? I didn't gather that the flame was
I think they're saying because Becca was burned at the stake. I
think fire and shooting a piece of like
technology
really and frying it electronically too.
Yeah, I mean, you could also say that it's like now like 100 years older or
That's
whatever.
True.
I think that they didn't handle the flame super well this season. I understood why they felt like they had to take it off the table completely because of Maddie. They needed to get Maddie to be the only option. Mm-hmm. But the flame surviving and letting the commanders transcend, to me, would have made a lot of sense. I don't think that they should have been able to come back because their bodies were gone, but at least letting them transcend, I think would have been a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
But I also understand why they felt like they had to completely take it off the board. Otherwise, the Maddie stuff wouldn't have made as much sense.
Yeah. I prefer to think it is busily reconstructing itself and retrieving its code from the Aegis 4 mainframe. And Raven comes across it when they go up to the mothership for a change of clothes for Clark. I'm sure Clark would swap her life for time in the mind space with Lexa like Mamori. Jason seems too involved with the prequel to pace the series properly, and the finale was crammed and rushed. The saving grace, the stellar performances of all the cast, and Alicia coming back as Lexa's avatar. There is no doubt Lexa was the love of Clark's life, and it's painful how much she still cares. Why doesn't Transcendence feel like a good deal? And if the end of humanity, with all its flaws and mistakes, is supposed to be a happy ending, then I'm not on board. I wanted an ending which was true to the show, where we found a way to redemption without Old Testament divine intervention. The show will be remembered for punching above its weight, creating an amazing adventure. But it will be the character that inspired and created a social revolution that will endure. I think that's the Klexicon kind of aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sad that the character of Clark that will be the legacy will not be who she was in the final season. Mm-hmm. That's going to be ignored. And when you talk about the legacy of the show, as it should be, because it is not the legacy of Clark Griffin.
No.
And so that to me feels like a major failing of the show.
So they actually wrote in a follow-up. Jay wrote in a follow-up saying, I'm more annoyed at the ending as days go by and the trashing of Clark. So with more stewing comes more anger.
Yeah.
Clark was the instigator of blood must not have blood. If Jason hadn't killed Lexa, her legacy would have been peace. The lives of beach crew will become increasingly bleak and lonely as the years go by. Surely Earth could have been portrayed as a new Garden of Eden. They had passed the test, and if Maddie had brought some of the kids back, the human race could have restarted again. Sterilization makes the judges monsters. Isn't the message of the show meant to be, life should be about more than just surviving? There is a mean streak in Jason, don't you think? How is he going to float the prequel when both the Flame and humanity are finished? It makes no sense.
All right, so we'll talk about the prequel in a second. What it comes down to, obviously, is that he wanted to make the ending of the human race. So he wanted to say, this is how humanity ends, and this is the story of how humanity ends. And overall, it's a bittersweet ending. There's good and bad to that. I do agree the sterilization thing is shit.
Yeah. It's not good, guys.
Yeah. So as far as isn't the show supposed to be about life is more than just surviving? I think it's interesting because I would say the finale both pushes that forward while also doing the opposite. Everyone who goes to the beach is following life is about more than just surviving.
Right.
And especially what we get from Murphy and Amori before they even go to the beach, that is that message too. Everyone who transcends is doing the opposite. So
whoops.
Yeah.
And then they don't survive. Life is about more than just surviving.
Well, who doesn't just survive?
Humanity.
Well, they do. They survive forever as a new thing. I don't know. Yeah, but
that's the thing.
Yeah, they evolve.
Yeah. But then also what is actual true humanity doesn't survive.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't know.
And then this question just goes away.
Yeah.
Whoops.
As far as beach cruise ending being so bad or whatever, I understand where people are coming from, but I also think in some ways, allegorically, it's not that different from real life.
Yeah.
You're going to die and that will be that. First of all, we don't even know if there's actually an afterlife or not in the 100 universe.
Right.
If we're saying these are aliens that make you live forever, that's different from an afterlife. But they're going to die off. And everyone will slowly die and you'll be left alone. Guess what happens to people who get really old? I know it's even more lonely because there will be literally no one. But there are a lot of people who that's their reality.
Yeah. This is all what we've got is all that we're actually guaranteed.
Yeah. And there are so many people who, when they're in their 70s, are just alone in their house and don't really have anyone.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Not to get too dark about it with COVID, but that's the case for people already of all ages.
Yeah, to be clear, that's fucking awful.
It's awful.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah.
But,
It is the reality.
it's reality.
Yeah.
And it's bitter as shit.
Yeah. Moving on. I think we're too cynical for everybody else on this in this world.
Some people are like, here's why people are being too harsh. And then that's followed up with here's why this is a stinking pile of crap. And I agree with you guys. Like, and we're mostly,
We're bit bopping around.
So what about the prequel? How do you...
So a lot of people are like, why would I care about the prequel if I know humanity ends in the end or whatever? Mm-hmm. To me, I don't personally understand that viewpoint. Mm-hmm. Because I'm like, it's kind of just like, how is that different from any other prequel? Like you always know how it ends. Mm-hmm. That's the whole point of a prequel, right?
Yeah.
I guess if your point is like, oh, they're working so hard to strive to save humanity and to stay alive, and ultimately, they'll fail. Mm-hmm. I mean, I suppose, but also like Rogue One exists. I mean, at the same time, Rogue One's a single movie. I don't know if you'd want to watch a Rogue One show. I'll find out when they put out the Rogue One show, which is basically happening. Yeah. I don't know. To me, it's not really a huge difference than what we had before. I don't know. Yeah,
it's the flaw of prequels in general.
Yeah.
I think one of the things, like, to combat that on a completely different genre thing is Better Call Saul, which, we have the events of Breaking Bad. Mm-hmm. You kind of, see where Saul ends up with his career. Like, why is it that interesting to watch him get there? Yeah. But then they also have these flashes to even further Saul after the events of Breaking Bad. And then as the seasons go, the question is, how much of this show is going to answer that question? Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people are going to be disappointed if that, we don't get a significant amount of episodes post Breaking Bad universe. Because I think people are entering this contract of slowly but surely we're gonna find out. And I'm like, but that, in my opinion, that's not what the show's about.
But in some ways, this is better to me than Better Call Saul, because we know what happens to the universe. Mm-hmm. We don't know what happens to Callie. Yeah. Like we know she dies, but that could be when she's 92. We don't know how she dies. Yeah. So to me, I'm like, the way you get people to care about a prequel is you get them to care about the characters that are new. Mm-hmm. And maybe you sprinkle in some old stuff to have fan service moments. But the point is, I don't know what happens to Callie and her brother, and if the prequel is going to work, it's going to make it about that relationship, and so that's how it's going to work. And to a certain degree, I mean, I don't know, I feel like they could do a Star Wars prequel on, I believe Alderon's the planet they blow up at the beginning of New Hope. It's I wouldn't be like, well, everyone's gonna... I mean, maybe you would. I don't know. Everyone's different.
Everyone's different. Yeah. Everyone has a barrier of, entry of, what would grab their attention. Yeah.
I mean, I think that there's certainly a precedent for, the dramatic irony and the doom of knowing it's all for nothing. Jesus. It's all for nothing.
Whoops.
That's what should be the name of the prequel.
It's all for nothing. That's going to be the fanfic that we write about this show. Yep. Ariana via the100podcast.com writes, people often say a final season of any show should be a love letter to its fans. Do you think the show was able to do that? This final season felt a little spiteful and disengaged to me for some reason, but I would love your take on it.
Should is an interesting term. Mm. I don't think it should. What shows and what writers owe to fans is a freaking complicated thing. I
think that's an evolving conversation and I think what
they owe fans is to pay off what they've built up. That said, like I've always said, I think they owed us to see Bellamy and Clark talk about their feelings. I don't think they owed us that at the end they'd be in love and have a happily ever after. Right. To me, that's two different things. Mm-hmm. I think the final season should be a love letter to the show. Yeah. Not to the fans. And
to the story.
Yeah. And if it's a love letter to the show and the fans love the show, in theory, that will work for everybody. You know, like, but a love letter to the fans, most fans don't want a sad ending to their show. So I'm not going to say you have to have a happy ending.
Happily ever after.
And there's a reason people deride fan service. It's not always a good thing. Sometimes it is a good thing.
Yeah.
For me personally, I think that the way they handled Lexa was good fan service. Some people feel differently. I can understand feeling differently, especially if you're like, the aliens suck. Well, I'm like, yeah, but they didn't do the aliens because they had Alicia. Right. They were going to do the aliens either way.
Yeah.
So, you know,
maybe someone else would have just showed up to do the test.
They even talked about how they thought about Abby for Clark and things like that.
Okay. Yeah. Because that would have made sense.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. I mean, that's, I guess, where I'm at.
I agree completely. It is a really, I don't envy showrunners in a way, you know, like, with social media, with like, the culture of any tweet can become an article at an entertainment website. Yeah. Like, all of this stuff puts a lot of pressure, and that can affect your storytelling. You know, we've talked a lot about in podcasts of like, is Jason the biggest villain of the 100? I'm like, you know, I think it's more complicated than that. Like, he's a real person, and you have to roll with the punches that are, you know, given to you at a certain point, and there's only, like, as someone wrote it, like, he's only human. It is a complicated thing, and I understand the frustration of all these fans from different perspectives, from different camps, like yelling at you about your failures and what they want and what you're doing. Like, also
saying a love letter to the fans implies that the fans are one entity.
They're all united.
They are not, because they could have written an entire season that was a love letter to Clark and Lexa. Some people would have loved it. A lot of other people would have said, fuck this shit. So, or the opposite.
There's no one right way. And that's why the closest you can come is to just pay off what you've spent time establishing. Be that story or character arc. Not
leaving loose ends, thematically tying up the things that you've built up, and not leaving them as loose ends either. Like, both plot holes and thematic loose ends, and making sure the characters have a complete arc and that behave
the way that they have progressed to behave. Even if they backslide, at least it would be like a logical thing.
And it doesn't mean that they have to end in a positive way,
right?
But it has to be a logical conclusion that doesn't, you know, go back on what you've seen thus far. And
that's unfortunately not what this season did. So
moving on.
All right. Lindsay via the 100pod@gmail.com wrote in an email that was called feedback back. We forgot to do that.
We didn't feedback back.
Thank you, Lindsay, for the reminder. Feedback back. I'm so sorry. We let everybody down. Feedback back. Better late than never. Yes. Hi, Dan and Olga. I remember discovering your podcast during season 5, and since then, you both have been a crucial aspect to my consumption of the 100. Aww. I feel like I get 10 times more out of the show by listening to you each week. The way both your minds work and the way they work together too. Aw, that's cute. Is not only fun and entertaining to listen to, but I also feel like I learned so much about listening to you both. About storytelling, about life, about the world, about myself, about the art of using inappropriate sound effects in the most ironic ways. I should have, You both never fail to make me laugh. I really love your dynamic so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice.
This gives me the warm and fuzzies. Normally I cut out when people compliment us, but you know what? We deserve it.
It's the final time.
So question, how the heck did Amori's body come back to life? When she died and her mind drive was put into Murphy, didn't that make her body obsolete? I'm very confused about how one would explain the process of Murphy with Amori's mind drive in his head, transcending, then returning back to Earth magically as 2 separate bodies. Do you have any thoughts on this? Is it just another hand-wavy thing? Don't get me wrong, thank God Murphy and Amori are together in the end, but I feel like I need some semblance of an explanation. Am I missing something?
So you're not really missing something.
No.
I could give you an explanation. Overall, it's hand wavy, but like my thought process is, so their consciousnesses both go up. They're two separate consciousnesses, and then they put the consciousness back in the bodies, and they
reanimate
them. I mean, like, they have advanced technology.
Yeah.
Yes, it doesn't really. How did any of their bodies get back and whatever?
Yeah, they were literally like pumping Echo's heart to keep her and Levitt alive.
The way I explain it to myself is that they have enough technology that they can heal bodies pretty well.
Yeah,
there's a difference between putting Amori back in that body and healing that body with technology, or finding Lux's ashes from 100 years ago and making a
more
new
than
body.
100 at this point.
Like Amori's body was freshly dead. So
yes, it was still there. Yeah, I think that someone wrote in about the question about like the mind drive, not the mind drives, the flame, and like what happened to the code of the commanders. It's like, well, something they could have said if the code still existed as an analogy to the mind drives is they are gone, but they can't return to a body because the body is
they can transcend, but they can't come back.
But they don't even answer that question. They don't have to, because the flame is not a factor. I could see why another reason why they didn't want the flame is because then they would have to answer about the bodies, and they would have to like give other more sci-fi things than spiritual. It
is what it is.
How many times have we said that? How many times have we said that during this season, or especially during the last like 2 episodes? Okay, Dan, last bit of feedback for the 100 ever.
Unless there's a prequel.
Maybe so everybody vote for a prequel if you love us.
Vote for a prequel. Go to the polls, everybody.
I meant like on Twitter, ask for, I don't know, rate your local.
Go to the polls,
everybody. Go vote. If you're in the United States and you're eligible
No, we can't talk about politics.
Why not?
They say that we're not allowed anymore.
Who says?
All the people. Moving on.
Guess we we're too political.
Yep. Why did that break you?
I don't know.
We got a review saying we should be less political.
And it's funny.
Yeah.
Because we're really not that political.
Yeah, well, Olga says her things that she says.
Like, go to the polls and vote Biden.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay.
I made no secret.
Yeah.
Anyway, Lena Lotvai, the100pod@gmail.com writes in. Hey, Dan and Olga. Hey. I'm writing to you for the first and final time. Feeling this is only appropriate considering the finality of it all and all that jazz. There's no common thread to these ramblings, so bear with me, much like our podcast. I've been an avid listener of your podcast since season 6, and I don't think I've ever really expressed how thankful I am that you exist. Which feels really weird to say to complete strangers, but I truly am grateful for every single dumb sound Dan has made on his audio board thingamajig and every frustrated Olga sigh. Towards the end of the show, it's these moments that have quite likely brought me more joy than watching the actual show did. I don't know whether to be happy or sad about that. Which is not to say I haven't enjoyed this season. I absolutely did, and I often found myself disagreeing with some of your more negative sentiments. Regardless of the disparity, you were always a joy to listen to. Now that the hole left by the 100 is starting to ease in my chest, I'm already dreading the hole your podcast will leave. Put simply, thank you for these years of entertainment and for all the other years I wasn't around for. Aw.
It's very nice.
I've cried a few times at nice things people have said.
People have said a lot of nice things, and I really appreciate everybody for listening over the years, for writing in feedback on the 40 different ways that you receive feedback, for leaving really great reviews. This has been a really awesome journey with all of you, and talking with people on Twitter, and I mean, we get feedback from services that I don't even really look at because we have too many of them. But I really appreciate you guys coming on this journey. I really appreciate you checking out the YouTube channel and chatting over there. And I don't know, what do you want to say?
Yeah, it's just this podcast. I've said it in a few places, but it bears repeating. It's really been a huge part of our relationship. of like, it's been a part of Dan and I's life, like since the very beginning, basically,
of our
relationship.
Yeah.
And now so many things have changed in our lives, and we're, planning our future together. And it's going to feel weird that the 100 isn't going to keep going with us through it all.
But podcasting will.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, like I said, keep your eyes out and your ears peeled.
Yeah.
Stay tuned to the youtube.com/doingok. Stay tuned to @the100 podcast on Twitter, @doingokvideo on Twitter. We have plans.
Yeah.
And also, I believe later this week, or within the next week and a half, we're going to do a video where we talk more about what our future plans are.
Mm-hmm.
So stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad, we got to go to a convention, multiple conventions because of this.
Yeah.
It's too bad COVID happened and the third one got out of the way.
Yeah.
But any sort of favorite moments or anything you're thinking about?
I mean, that's a really hard. Are you testing me on the history of our
the
podcast?
History of the poll. Oh,
I mean, I just think back to being in your basement when we were recording the early episodes, and dealing with a bug on the ceiling, and then talking about killing it, freaking out, and then going back into
now we're in a studio where we have to kill bugs
a lot. There was an adventure this week too. But the point is that it was through it all, we would just sit down and talk about a 43-minute show, whatever the running time is, and then talk about it for 2 hours, an hour and a half, and still find things to say. And it's just, I always love hearing what you have to say.
Thanks,
and
dear.
you're so smart.
You're smart.
Thank you.
We work together. We're very good partnership.
Yeah, we are. And it's just been, I think, a really great way of getting to know how each of us thinks, and how we bounce off each other and make our thoughts better together. There have been so many highs of the 100. There are so many cute moments, some of which are caught on our live reactions with finales, and then there are so many lows that we rage and scream over and roll our eyes at. But I mean, at some point, I'm going to listen to all of our podcasts again and relive this time.
God, I'm scared. I'm sorry for whatever stupid stuff I said early on, but
we grow, we learn more. The show has taught us a lot too. It's prompted some really interesting stuff.
That's the thing. As much as the show's made a lot of questionable decisions, I appreciate that it has led to discussions about mental health, about suicide, about sexual assault, about race, whatever, self-harm, so many things that we've had, disability, euthanasia. The fact that we've been able to have real discussions because of the show is to me why I love talking about a show like this. Yeah. And why I, struggle more with doing a podcast on The Flash or something, right? There are lots of shows that I like that are good that aren't necessarily going to lead to complex discussions. Yeah. Beyond that was fun. Yeah. And that is why I really enjoy the show. The characters mean so much to me. I've loved seeing our audience grow throughout the years. Yeah. And it's sad in some ways that I'm season 7 is by far our biggest audience, which makes sense, but also it's sad to see, how that ends there. Yeah. I really enjoyed a lot of our end games that we did.
Oh man.
And just thinking back to you being hating Octavia in season 1 and you being well, you'll get there.
I forgot that I hated her guts.
Lots of talks about Clark's boobs early on.
Oh my God. I don't know if I stand by those now. I'm that's really gross.
I stand by those boobs. They're right over
Dan,
there.
No. Stop it. God.
And I guess lots of laughs and lots of good times.
You mentioned Endgame, and I do remember one of my favorite moments. Yeah. I forget what led to it. Yeah. But it was exactly the thing of like if Clark was like having sex with someone, it's like, oh, Bellamy, oh, Lexa, oh, Bellamy, oh, Lexa. Like, so many seasons ago already being like, who's it gonna be? Who's it gonna be? She wants both. Why not?
Why not both? Good times.
Good times. Simpler times, dare I say.
I don't know. That was not too far before Alexa died, I don't think.
Oh, shit. I mean, yeah, I figured she was still...
Yeah, still kicking.
Oh, God.
All right. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm going to miss it. I'm going to miss you guys. And I hope some of you stick around for our future stuff. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's COVID times, so there's not that much television to talk about.
Yeah, it's kind of rough out there for TV podcasters.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. And our fight is over.
No, Dan. May we meet again.